Let's use some recycled glass jars and wall decals from the dollar store to make some pretty flower mason jars. So for this craft, I just started with some spaghetti sauce jars from Aldi. I really like these, like not because it's my favorite spaghetti sauce, but because I really like the jars. So I collected a few of them. And then I actually just left, like, there was some sticky adhesive left. I just left it on because it was going to be covered by my wall decal anyway. These come in a 2-pack from Dollar Tree, so 2 big flowers. Just cut one in half, and then you can lay it right onto your jar. So like I said, there was a little bit of residue. I just stuck the flower right over it. If you wanted to use Goo Gone to make sure your jar was completely clean, you're welcome to do that. But just smooth that half decal right over the jar. You'll notice I left about 1 inch at the bottom. So the cut side of that decal was right in line with that ridge at the bottom of the jar. And then I just decided to cover the bottom of the jar with twine using some hot glue. So you want to use like the tiniest dabs of hot glue and add hot glue frequently. So for the first, I don't know, like 5 or 10 rows, yeah, maybe 10 or 12 rows, it's really easy, right? Because it's kind of a straight surface. So you can just kind of keep putting a dab on the back of the jar of hot glue and then wind the twine around and keep going. But eventually it gets a little bit more complicated as that jar continues to curve down and inward. So pretty quickly you're gonna have to, and I find it's best to do this early on, otherwise you'll end up with a bunch of slipping twine and it's a pain. So every, I don't know, half a turn, 2/3 of a turn, just add a tiny little dab of hot glue. But the thing is, you don't want it to stick out and poke between the rows of twine. So I found it easiest to do the tiniest little line of hot glue right up against the piece of twine that was already there, and then stick your new row of twine right up against it. So you're wrapping and kind of pushing down towards the top of the jar at the same time. I found it easiest to either hold your mason jar upside down on your craft table, or on one of mine, I actually just held the top of the mason jar like against my body so that I could see looking straight down at the jar where any gaps were between my twine. But there you go. You just keep working your way until you get kind of towards the bottom of the mason jar and you're tired of hot gluing and you've burned your fingers and you decide to call it a day. So just then cut off that tail end of the twine and you're in business. And then this next step is totally optional, but I decided to paint the lids of my jar because this bright red was obviously not going to go with my pink flower decals. So I just used Waverly chalk paint from Walmart in the color Fern. I don't use this very often, but it paired really well with the decals. But use whatever color paint you want, chalky finish paint or spray paint even. I was able to get pretty good coverage with 2 coats, and chalk paint dries quickly, so I was able to get this done in no time flat. And then, like I said, I made 3 jars total that I just kind of grouped together. This would make a great like little centerpiece on a spring or summer table, or add it to a bookshelf or a mantle. I filled 1 jar with wooden beads and the other 2 with just some faux greenery. Super easy. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Until next time, happy making!